He wasn't looking for anything, just trying to fix a problem. In 1963, a man in the Nevşehir province of Turkey was renovating his home. Chiseling away at the back wall of his basement, cracks had formed. The stones were old. He expected to find maybe a broken beam or collapsed mortar. What he found was air. Behind the wall, an opening. Cold air, dry and ancient, poured out like breath from a long buried mouth. He grabbed a flashlight, leaned in. There were stairs. And not just stairs, tunnels, chambers, passages descending into the bedrock, rooms carved from volcanic rock, stretching further than the light could reach. He hadn't found a cellar. He had broken into a city underground, with doors that sealed from the inside, ventilation shafts, water wells, stables, even schools and churches, all carved by hand, hidden from history. He told the authorities. Archaeologists came. They kept going down, level after level. 18 stories beneath the surface, enough space for 20,000 people. No one had any idea it was there, and no one could explain who had built it, or what they were hiding from. The depths beneath their feet. Long before the man with the chisel, long before the concrete homes and power lines above, people had been living under this ground. Not camping, not hiding, living. Derinkuyu wasn't a cave, it was a system. Entire communities had once moved their lives below the earth, cooking, sleeping, worshipping, underground, for months at a time. And it wasn't crude. Each level was planned, engineered. Ventilation shafts rose hundreds of feet, perfectly aligned to bring air to every chamber. Water wells tapped into aquifers untouched by the surface. Massive stone doors rolled into place to seal off hallways from invaders, or worse. There were schools with benches, chapels with altars, communal kitchens blackened by centuries of fire, storage rooms still showing traces of olive oil, grain, wine. And yet, no names, no dates, no inscriptions, just precision and silence. The deeper archaeologists went, the more questions surfaced. Who had the tools to carve through soft volcanic tuff with such accuracy? Who knew how to manage airflow, fire, water, and disease in total darkness? And most of all, what were they running from? Because no one builds a city this deep unless they're trying to disappear. The builders without a name. No one left a signature. Not on the ceilings, not on the stones, not on the maps. The entire underground city of Derinkuyu, more than 18 levels deep in some estimates, was carved by hands we cannot name. There's no monument, no royal decree, no empire claiming its construction. Just a labyrinth of tunnels. And the questions they left behind. Some theories say it was the Phrygians. Others argue for early Christians fleeing Roman persecution. Still others believe it began even earlier, during the Hittite era or before, modified over centuries by wave after wave of frightened survivors. But that's the thing. These weren't just people escaping persecution. They were engineers, planners, builders. They knew how to create airflow through miles of corridors, how to collect condensation for water, how to bury heat and silence deep beneath the earth. And they never bragged about it. They didn't etch triumph into the walls. They didn't leave prayers in stone. They left nothing but function. That's what makes it so strange, so unlike other ruins. Derinkuyu wasn't made to impress. It was made to survive. The hidden world below the earth. This wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a city. Not a metaphorical one, a real one, with homes, stables, wine presses, chapels, schools. They even had graves. The people of Derinkuyu didn't just hide here. They lived here. They raised children, prayed, cooked, slept, waited, and waited. Some tunnels dropped vertically, 4 or 5 stories at a time, accessed only by rope or ladder. Other passageways narrowed so tight, only one person could move through at a time. Strategic, defensible, claustrophobic by design. Massive stone doors, round like millstones, could be rolled across entries from the inside, impenetrable, silent. They weren't fleeing a raid. They were preparing for something worse, something long, something that might last months, maybe years. Above them, the world changed. Armies marched. Empires rose and fell. But down here, under volcanic stone, they endured in the dark, with airflow systems that still work, with water wells that still run clear, with soot still blackening the kitchen ceilings. It's like they planned for the end of the world and made it livable, not forever, but long enough. The enemies they never named. There are no carvings of battles, no records of the threat, no enemy banners drawn in the stone. And yet, every hallway, every door, every tunnel speaks of one thing: fear. The kind of fear that doesn't come from one war or one ruler. This was generational fear, slow, quiet, and constant. Fear that teaches you to disappear without being told. So who were they hiding from? Historians have theories: Arab raiders, Roman soldiers, later waves of Mongol incursions. All possible, all terrifying, but none explain the scale, the patience, the engineering. Derinkuyu wasn't built overnight. It wasn't a bunker, it was a system, a response, an instinct. And the people who made it never told us why. Maybe they couldn't, maybe they didn't survive, or maybe silence was the only way to stay safe. Even now, thousands of years later, no one knows how many people it sheltered. Some say 20,000, others say 50. All we know is that they lived long enough to disappear without a trace, because down there, in the silence, their enemy had no name, and neither did they. The air that still moves. You'd think a place like this would suffocate, sealed in darkness, carved into volcanic rock. But it doesn't. The air still moves. Ancient engineers carved more than tunnels, they carved breath. Dozens of ventilation shafts, some plunging over 50 meters deep, funnel air from the surface to the lowest chambers. No fans, no machines, just pressure, gravity, design. Some shafts were so cleverly hidden, invading armies walked right over them, never knowing thousands of people were breathing beneath their feet. Even today, if you stand at the bottom of Derinkuyu, you can feel it. A faint draft. Cool, dry, whispering through the stone. It's a quiet kind of miracle that something built in the shadows without cement or electricity, still works better than most modern shelters. No blueprints survive, no instruction manuals, just the proof, right there in the dustless corridors and still turning air. Someone long ago knew how to disappear into the earth and still breathe. The depths we can't measure. There's an official map of Derinkuyu. It shows rooms, corridors, stairwells, 8 levels deep. But that's just the part we've found. Below the known city, ground-penetrating radar suggests there might be more. Empty spaces, hollow pockets, layers that go deeper than any current excavation. No one knows what's down there. Not exactly. Only that something is. And that's the part that haunts people most. Because if this is just the surface, if the chambers we've seen are only the beginning, then who built the rest? And how far were they willing to go to stay hidden? Some locals believe Derinkuyu was never finished, that it was a living structure, expanded as needed, adapted to danger. Others believe the lowest levels were sealed on purpose because of what was buried down there. Not people, but ideas, fears, memories too heavy for the world above. You can walk these tunnels for hours. You'll find chapels carved into stone, cisterns to hold fresh water, even schools tucked behind round stone doors. But there comes a point where the path ends, not because there's no more tunnel, but because someone closed it, and they never said why. The theories that refuse to die. Ask a historian and they'll say, Derinkuyu was built by the Phrygians, or maybe the early Christians, or perhaps even older. Some civilization without a name. But ask a local. And the answers change. Some say it wasn't built at all. It was discovered, already there, hollowed out by something not quite human. Others whisper that it was a refuge, not from invaders, but from the sky. That it sheltered people during a time when fire fell from above. A comet, a war, or something else entirely. There are stories of strange markings on the lowest levels, symbols that don't match any known language, walls too smooth to have been carved by iron tools, chambers sealed with a kind of mortar no one can reproduce. Mainstream archaeology avoids these tales, too speculative, too strange. But they keep resurfacing, because Derinkuyu doesn't fit neatly into history's boxes. It's too big, too hidden, too perfect for its purpose. And when something this vast exists, beneath our feet, beneath our records, beneath our understanding, people ask questions. Theories rise where facts go silent. The fear that shaped it. You don't build something like Derinkuyu unless you're afraid of something bigger. This wasn't a bunker. It was a world. A full society carved in stone, meant to vanish from sight and survive there. It had air shafts, water storage, livestock pens. It had schools and sanctuaries. And it had gates. Massive, round stones designed to roll shut and never reopen unless pushed from the inside. Whoever built it wasn't preparing for war. They were preparing for disappearance. The kind of fear that drives people underground isn't the fear of death. It's the fear of erasure, of being hunted, not just in body, but in memory. Maybe it was invading armies. Maybe it was environmental collapse. Or maybe it was something older, something cosmic, mythic, beyond what we're willing to write in history books. But whatever it was, it lasted long enough and was strong enough to justify a city that could hold 20,000 people underground in silence. Not for hours, not for days, but for months, maybe even years. And that kind of silence, the engineered, deliberate silence of survival, leaves an echo. Even centuries later, you can feel it in the stone. The silence that still breathes. If you walk through Derinkuyu today, the lights are artificial, but the silence isn't. It's the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels occupied. Like the air remembers what you don't. Like someone just left, or is still here, listening. The walls don't echo. They absorb. Your footsteps vanish quickly. Your breath feels louder than it should. And sometimes, if you stand still long enough, you start to wonder if you've stepped out of time altogether. There are no inscriptions, no statues, no names etched into the stone. Just rooms, tunnels, air that still moves, and a silence that still breathes. Derinkuyu was never meant to be seen. It was meant to be endured, lived in, hidden. It doesn't boast. It hums. A soft, cold hum that stretches back through centuries, reminding us that survival isn't always loud. Sometimes it's underground, unmarked, waiting. And when we finally find it, we realize we weren't the first to fear the surface. We were just the first to forget. If you made it this far, thank you. Not for watching, but for listening, for staying curious, for not turning away when the past whispered from the dark. Most people will never hear this story, and many who do will forget it by morning. But maybe you won't. If this stayed with you, consider subscribing. Not for the algorithm, not for the clicks, but because some places, some voices deserve to be remembered, even if they're buried in stone.